All right, we are recording. At this time, I am very happy to introduce to everyone Alexandra Herman, who is a staff attorney from the Disability Rights Network. And she is going to be providing the training today on us about exercising your rights, and specifically talking about our long-term care consumers as well, and their right to vote during this very important time, which is, before we know it, election day again. With no further ado, I'd like to pass things over to Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to be presenting on some issues that we see popping up in voting generally and specifically for people voting in long-term care facilities. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, or do you prefer that everybody save questions till the end? I don't know how you guys normally do it.
It's 100% up to you. We've got about 63 people in queue in the session right now, so it's usually easier with the large group if we kind of hold off on questions, and then we open it up when you want to take a break and have them bring them on, and we can help with the chat as well. So feel free to get started, and maybe what we'll do is just take a pause when it feels logical for you, and we'll open it for questions at that time.
Okay, great. Sounds good. You can advance to the next slide. So the basic overarching things to know from the outset is that anyone in a long-term care facility has the right to vote in the manner they choose. No nursing home or other congregate care setting should be imposing a certain mode of voting on its residents. If people want to go vote in person, they have the right to do that, and the long-term care facility should help facilitate that process. Sometimes we hear about everybody being essentially forced to vote through the mail, and that is not what is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be up to the individual how they want to vote, and it is up to the facility to facilitate. So if they need transportation, that doesn't fall on the person's family or friends. The facility is supposed to provide that transportation, but as I'm sure you all know, that is not always what happens, but that is what is supposed to happen. Next slide, please. And so the first thing that is very important in the long-term care context is to check on registration. A lot of times we see facilities making assumptions about if people are registered or where they're registered, and that can cause problems down the line because they might bring them to the wrong polling location, or they might apply for a mail-in ballot at the wrong address. So it's very important to first confirm that people are registered to begin with, and also see where they are registered. Particularly if you're requesting a mail-in ballot, you need to make sure you request it based on where you're registered, not where you're residing at. Same thing with your polling location. It depends on where you're registered, not where you're residing. And long-term care population can be very, I guess transit is not the right word, but people come and go from those settings. So just because someone is in, let's say, Delaware County does not mean that is where they are registered. So very important to check into the registration before doing anything and making any type of a voting plan. And for this upcoming election, the registration deadline is October 24th. And you can register online, through the mail, or in person at a number of agencies like the DMV. Next slide. So I guess I already just kind of covered this, but it's, again, very important to confirm where people are registered and not assume that they're registered at the facility's address. I know in the 2020 election, there were a lot of issues with facilities in Philadelphia, assuming people were registered at a certain location, and then their mail-in ballot applications got rejected. And at the point when they figured out that the issue was the registration, it was too late to do anything about it. And a lot of people lost out on the opportunity and their right to vote because of that. So again, super important to make sure the facilities, as they're helping people to vote, check on the registration. Next slide. Okay, as I'm sure you're all well aware, there are two ways to vote in Pennsylvania, either through the mail or in person. And we're going to cover mail-in voting first. Next slide. And next one. there is a bit of confusion about this still. The law changed in 2019 to allow everyone to vote through the mail, but there are still some county election officials that seem to believe that people with disabilities can only vote via absentee ballot versus mail-in ballot. But that is not true. Even if you have a disability, you can use a mail-in ballot. You do not have to use an absentee ballot. Why does that matter? It matters because if you're voting absentee, you're required to provide documentation from a medical professional. Versus if you're just voting through the mail and not absentee, you don't need to do any of that. So you get to retain more privacy over your medical information, and it's just frankly easier because there's one less step involved. So we encourage anybody who wants to vote through the mail to do it via a mail-in ballot versus an absentee ballot. And the deadline for this upcoming election to apply for a mail-in ballot is November 1st, but there are still many counties that seem to be backlogged with their mail-in voting process. So we tell people to apply ASAP if they intend to vote through the mail, because you never know what's going to happen and what delays will occur with the mail. So apply as soon as possible. Next slide. And so some things that often come up for people who are voting through the mail who have disabilities, which would be a lot of people in long-term, or everyone in a long-term care facility, there are a few issues that we see popping up. Some people might need help marking their ballot. Now, technically, you're supposed to have that indicated on your registration card, but in practice, a lot of people don't, because a lot of people register when they don't have a disability, and then as they age, they acquire a disability and can no longer do it themselves, but they never get their registration card changed. So if people don't have that indicated on their card, that doesn't mean that they are not allowed to use assistance marking their ballot. They just have to include a note or a written document that says that they needed assistance. And they need to identify what their disability is, specify the election, have it signed by both themselves and the person who assisted them, and put it in the outer envelope. Everything that is not the ballot will go in the outer envelope. Super important that things are not placed in the secrecy envelope, or else the ballot will be invalid. Another option for people that need help marking their ballots is to use the accessible electronic ballot marking device. It's called the OmniBallot. And this is available to people who are blind or low vision, or someone who has a dexterity issue and cannot physically mark it themselves. This would be another option that people can use. And this could be preferable for a lot of people because it allows them to retain the privacy of their ballot and to vote independently. Now, in order to use the OmniBallot, you would need the facility to have a computer that people could use to vote this way. But since they have the responsibility of helping facilitate voting in the manner the resident chooses, they should be able to make this happen if someone wants to vote via the OmniBallot. And anyone who would be interested in doing that would need to first apply for a mail-in ballot, and then they would need to make the request of their county to vote electronically versus on paper. And there's more information about that process on the Votes PA website. Excuse me. But that is not a fully electronic process. At the last step, you do need to actually print out the ballot and then mail it back. Next slide, please. Let's see. Did I skip one? Do you have the slide that says, what do I do if I can't sign the back? There we go. And for some people, they might be able to mark their ballot, but they can't actually sign their ballot. And there is no requirement that people have a signature. You can just place a mark. But if someone cannot even do that, they would just need to include a declaration. Or sorry. Yeah, they would need to indicate that they had assistance making the mark, and then put information about who helped them. And then a witness would sign as well. Again, don't put anything in the secrecy envelope, don't mark it. only the ballot would go in there. Next slide. Now, this is probably the biggest issue we see with mail-in voting in the long-term care context, designated agents. So under the law, if you cannot return or apply for your own mail-in ballot yourself, you need, by reason of a disability, you are entitled to an accommodation called a designated agent. And this person is someone that will effectuate any step in the process for you. So they could apply for the ballot, they could pick it up, or they could drop it off. Now, a lot of people think that dropping off, you would only need an agent if you are physically putting it in a drop box, or if you are going down to the election office and dropping it off. But technically, if you are even putting someone else's ballot into the mailbox, that is not okay. So anyone who cannot put their own ballot into the mail by reason of a disability would need a designated agent. And there is a form available online that you can get through the PA Votes website. You don't need to notarize it. You just need 2 copies, so one to include with your ballot and one to keep. Do not put it in the secrecy envelope. Now, the biggest issue, next slide, that we see related to long-term care facilities with this is that the Department of State does not consider long-term care facilities to be households. And because of their rules around who can serve as a designated agent, that means that only one person can assist one voter within the facility. So that means you cannot have a staff member serving as a designated agent for all of the voters within a facility. You could have one staff member assist one voter. So that means facilities cannot rely exclusively on staff to serve as their agents. So while staff could help out some people, if you have, 150 people within the facility voting through the mail, you're likely not going to have that many staff. So it's very important that facilities come up with a plan for how they're going to match people up with agents, encourage residents to reach out to friends and family members who might be able to serve as their agents. In some areas, there are nonprofits that are assisting with this process that are sending volunteers in to serve as agents. So it's just very important that people think about this ahead of time, like now, and figure out how they're going to ensure that everyone who wants to vote through the mail and who needs an agent has one. It was a real problem in 2020, and we have not heard things that indicate to us a lot of people are going to be going to vote at the polls this year either. So we anticipate that there will be a lot of voters in these facilities that need designated agents, and not everyone has friends and family that they can call in to help them with this. So again, that would fall on the facility to help figure out who can serve as an agent. All right, moving on to voting, or I guess this is a good place to stop for questions. Does anybody have any questions related to any voting through the mail stuff? Nope. Okay, then we can move on to voting in person, which would be the next slide.
We actually do have one question. I believe Pamela, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you, Alexandra? Hi, can you all hear me now?
Yep.
I have been a designee for several people here in the Philadelphia area, and the designee, I'm getting confused, and I don't know if it's different in different counties, whether the designee affidavit versus and the declaration are one and the same. Because I know in Philadelphia, when you go on the website, it's called designee, and I would have to sign, the person would have to sign, I go drop it off, pick it up for them, and bring it back to them, and then bring it back to the office. It's really disheartening to hear that the state does not recognize LTCs, hence the word long-term care, as residents. It doesn't make any sense. But also, you said designee affidavit in the very beginning to help someone to fill out the ballot, and that if that person cannot mark the ballot, that they would have to send a letter, or can you clarify that?
Yeah, so designated agents are
Mm-hmm.
just someone that helps in the process of either applying for, picking up, or returning the ballot. So that's
Right.
a separate person from someone who actually helps with marking the ballot. So for the designated agent piece, you don't need to have any type of a signed affidavit or anything like that. All you really need, and is supposed to need, now this could vary from county to county because some of the counties don't seem to understand the rules around designated agents. But the way it's supposed to work is that all you need for a designated agent is this form that's available on the Department of State website. Print it out, have the voter fill out the top, the agent fill out the bottom, and then return the form with the ballot in the outer envelope. If you are assisting someone with the actual act of voting, so filling out the ballot, then for that, you would need to, if the person does not already have their need for assistance marked on their registration card, you would need to include a document that says that someone assisted you and why, and sign it and enclose it in the outer envelope. Again, you don't need to have a sworn affidavit. And there are the guidance around how to indicate that you had assistance with marking your ballot, it doesn't really exist. So this is what we tell people to do, but in the law, there is no set out procedure for how that should happen. The only thing that is written out in the law is that it's supposed to be marked on your registration. But in practice, most people don't have that marked on their registration. Does that all make sense and answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah, because I'm a committee person, so that I'm happy you said that, because going out now, people understand their websites give different directions and have slate David's versus
Sorry, I didn't hear most of what you said. You were breaking up on my end. I don't know if other people could hear you.
I said I appreciate you, because the counties, the information advanced. So sometimes someone different county, I'm like, oh, that's different. To do
I didn't hear that again. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You're kind of fading in and out.
All right, hold on. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, now it's much better.
Okay. On county, and I noticed that the instruction information is slightly different, which is kind of confusing. So I appreciate your clarifying that.
I caught a bit of that. It sounded like you were saying that information put out by the different counties is different, and that causes a lot of confusion. Is that what you were saying? Yeah, that is a huge problem with how Pennsylvania handles voting. There is no set guidance. Well, that's not true. There is set guidance for the entire state, but that is ultimately just guidance. And a lot of the counties do what they want. So it's very important to, if you ever have any questions, to reach out to your county's election office and figure out exactly how they want things done, because things do differ from county to county. And Department of State can only ultimately issue guidance. They're not very good at mandating things. So, all right. Was that the only mail-in voting question? All right, so we will move on to voting in person. So going back to my original point about everyone can vote how they want to, facility has to help make that happen, and registration is super important to making sure that you can vote how you want to. So for voting in person, it is also super important that you confirm where someone is registered, because that will determine where their polling place is. And someone could be registered an hour from where their facility is. The facility still has an obligation to figure out how to get that person to their polling place if they want to vote in person. Or alternatively, the voter could change their registration to the facility, which means there would be less distance to travel. But if you have somebody who is in a facility temporarily and has every intention of going home, you probably wouldn't want that person changing their registration. Versus someone who is likely there to stay, it might make sense for them to update their registration to the facility address. But always just check where someone is registered. Facilities need to check this and help the person figure out a voting plan if they want to go vote in person. If you are unsure of where you're registered or there's any confusion, you always have the option of going to vote at the polling place for where you are now, your current address, and to vote via provisional ballot. Now, if they come to find out that you're not actually a registered voter there, ultimately that ballot will get kicked out and it won't count. But at the last minute, if that's the only option, it may help someone to vote if they happen to be registered at the address. Next slide. So accessibility for residents of long-term care facilities is often quite important, and not all polling places are physically accessible. So it is important to check that your polling place is accessible and to come up with a plan of how you're going to vote if you want to vote in person and you find that there are barriers to getting into that place for you to vote. If someone is registered at an address that has an inaccessible polling place and they cannot figure out a way around that to help that person vote, because a lot of times there are ways to still get in and ultimately vote, but in some cases there may not be. You can always go and vote at the county election office. That is an option if your county has no way to get you into the polling place that you are assigned to. Usually, though, there is a way to get in, and usually the accessibility barriers are simple things like there's an accessible entrance, but the door to that entrance might be locked on election day. So it's a matter of getting in touch with the right person and getting that door unlocked. And usually the judge of elections, who is the person that you would go to initially to address issues like that, and if they can't figure out how to address the issue, they would then contact the county board of elections. And if you hear of anybody running into these issues on election day, we are also a great place to reach out to. Excuse me. We can help troubleshoot election issues in real time through our intake line. Next slide. Okay, so things that might come up on election day for voting in person. Next slide. So people are entitled to assistance marking the ballot at the polls, just like they are with mail-in ballots. Again, this is supposed to be on your registration card, and it should be noted in the polling book if it's on the registration card, but if not, you will just need to fill out a declaration. And anyone can assist with marking the ballot other than the judge of elections and anyone who's involved in the voters' employer or their union. They are a member of a union. And voters just basically need to indicate to the poll workers that they need help, and then they should help make sure that process is taken care of correctly. So they would help with the declaration process, or they will check to see if that's already indicated in the poll book, in which case you wouldn't need a declaration. Next slide. Now, some people apply for a mail-in ballot, but then they change their minds and they want to vote at the polls. Or some people don't apply, but someone applies on their behalf, their facility might apply, and then they catch wind of that and they want to vote in person. So they then want to go do that. And that's their right. And people can change their mind about how they want to vote. If someone initially thought they wanted to vote through the mail and then they changed their mind, they can go to their polling place, and if they bring their ballot with them, their mail-in ballot, and give it to the poll workers to be spoiled, and all the envelopes, everything that they got in the mail, then they can vote in person normally. And it's as if they never requested the mail-in or absentee ballot. If someone made the request for the mail-in ballot and never received it, which is something that we experienced a lot in 2020, you can still go and vote in person, but you would have to fill out a provisional ballot. Another thing that people had a lot of in 2020, which could be an issue again this year, is they requested the ballot, they got the ballot, but they received it at the last minute. And if you're in a county that doesn't have drop boxes, you might not be able to return it in time. So that is a problem, and that's a concern to a lot of people. So people might decide to go vote in person at the last minute because they're afraid of their ballot not getting there, getting back to the county by the date and the time that they need to, because it's a short time window. So if so, you can go vote in person. If you have the ballot, you give it in to be spoiled. If you don't, you just have to vote provisionally. Next slide. Some other issues that typically come up with voting in person: registration issues, which could be a big one for long-term care voters. The accessible voting machine, since not all machines, depending on the county, are accessible machines, might not be working. In which case, if you need an accessible machine, you might not at that moment in time be able to vote, but the county should address that very quickly. They're supposed to. Or you might not be given a provisional ballot. In 2020, a lot of poll workers didn't seem to understand that people had the option of changing how they wanted to vote. If people showed up with their mail-in ballots, they didn't understand that those could be spoiled and people still had the right to vote in person, and they just told them no, or they didn't know. There was just a lot of confusion in 2020. Hopefully that won't be the case this year, but who knows? So some people might get denied a provisional ballot, even though they should be entitled to one. If there's any issue that comes up and there is a question on the part of the poll worker as to whether or not a person should be allowed to vote at that polling location, they should give them the provisional ballot, and then it falls to the county after the fact to figure out if that person should have actually voted or not. That's why it's a provisional ballot. So no one should really be denied a provisional ballot. So steps to take if you run into any type of in-person voting issue: you first ask the poll workers for help, ask to speak to the judge of elections. Every polling location should have a judge of elections present. And if that doesn't get the issue elevated up to the county and that county doesn't get involved and address it at that point, then reach out to election protection, or you can call our intake line. And someone either from our staff, or if you call election protection, should be able to assess the situation and address it in real time. Next slide. And then these are just some good places to go for resources related to voting. Votes PA has all the various forms that someone could need, registration stuff. The PA Voter Services website, kind of like a duplicate of what's on Votes PA. And then we have a bunch of resources that are specific to voters with disabilities on our website as well. And that is it from me. If anybody has other questions.
If folks have questions, feel free to use your raise hand or put questions in the chat. And we'll get them over. TC, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, so in facilities, I don't know, what if a resident talks to the ombudsman and say about wanting to vote, and they say that the social worker or whoever, pick anybody you want to pick, said, oh, you can't vote. You don't know what you're doing, or some form of that. I'm tired, so I can't think of a really good scenario, but any kind of scenario like that, what would you recommend that how the ombudsman would deal with that if the ombudsman really did know, because they've known this person and that they should be able to exercise their right to vote? How should that be dealt with?
That's a great question, something I should have probably included in that PowerPoint, so thank you for asking it. There is no competency requirement to vote in the state of Pennsylvania. Anyone who is a citizen and over the age of 18 has the right to vote. So people with dementia still have the right to vote. And as long as they can indicate who they want to vote for, if you or I thinks that they don't actually understand what they're doing, that is ultimately irrelevant. If the person expresses that they wish to vote and they can indicate who they want to vote for in some fashion, it doesn't have to be by actually marking the ballot, doesn't have to be verbally. If they can communicate that in some way, that is their right. And the facility is not allowed to get in the way of that. There are tons of people in the world that are completely competent who just choose a person by doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo when they vote. There are a lot of people that make uninformed decisions when they are voting. And so everyone has that right in Pennsylvania, regardless of disability. So if you encounter that, I would suggest that you first make clear that there is no competency requirement and say that is the person's right. And it doesn't matter if the facility perceives them as not being able to make the decision. And if you continue to run into issues around that, I would suggest reaching out to us because that is something we would be particularly interested in getting involved in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Robert, go ahead and unmute your line.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Robert Berger, Ombudsman, Chester County. I have a question. If a resident of a long-term care facility is deemed incapacitated, do they also have the privilege of voting, or is that taken away from them?
No. Someone who has been deemed incapacitated by a court maintains their right to vote.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I do not see any other hands raised or anything else in the chat at this time.
I see Eve has a question.
All right. Yes, I do. Sorry. Alexandra, I kind of popped in a little bit late. So now in our facility, because this is new for myself and our director, our activities coordinator, we have a list of a bunch of people at our facility that is registered to vote. I mean, we do have some people that are in town that we can try to do in person. But how do we do it? I mean, there's only 3 of us that really work with our residents. You had said about the agent that would be providing at least just the drop-in. We do have a drop. I mean, could our people, we have a mailbox here. Is that is that okay for them to put their ballot in there, seal it, and then just put it in our outgoing mail? Does that suffice?
You mean to have themselves place it in that outgoing mailbox?
Yes.
Yeah, that is totally fine.
Okay.
And if for some reason you had somebody who couldn't physically get to the outgoing mailbox, then you would need to have an agent form included for the process of physically putting it in the mailbox.
Now, my other question though is, we do have a nice amount of residents who have Parkinson's. Is that something that we would need a letter stating that they would need assistance? Not the fact that they can't verbalize it, but maybe their hands are too shaky that they wouldn't be able to write or put in the bubble for who they want. But do we still have to do a different person to help them? So maybe like family or like maybe elder care or someone that would come in to assist them. Would that be okay for them to help fill that out? But we still need a letter that somebody helped them because of a specific diagnosis that's causing them to not be able to fill it out on their own.
Yeah, so the assistance with physically marking the ballot is separate from the designated agent, who is someone who just assists with getting the ballot or returning the ballot. And for assistance with marking the ballot, there is no one-to-one restriction. So you could, let's say you have 5 people in the same facility who need help marking their ballot. They could all be assisted by the same person. That one-to-one rule only applies to the designated agent. So anyone could assist them as long as they indicate that and put basically a letter saying so-and-so helped me with this inside the outer envelope of the ballot. The other option would be doing the Omniballot, which is the online accessible mail-in ballot. I don't know if that would be potentially easier than just having someone else mark the physical ballot, but that's another option that people who can't mark their own ballot have.
Okay. Would we be able to do that for someone that's not visually? Like, could we just do it online with them if that's easier than doing the mail-in?
So the Omniballot is for someone who cannot use the paper mail-in ballot by reason of a disability. And they're not specific about what the disability is. Typically, the Omniballot is used by people who are blind or low vision, but it can also be used by people who have some type of dexterity issue and can't physically mark the paper ballot themselves. So it is an option potentially for a wide range of disabilities.
All right, I'm not seeing any more hands, although there is a chat question. Karina asks, now I'm a little bit confused. So one person per resident to fill out the ballot, but one person can help several residents fill out their ballot. Okay, so she's saying one person.
Okay, so I agree this is incredibly confusing and doesn't frankly make a lot of sense, but this is the rules as we have them. So designated agent, again, is just someone who helps with applying for the ballot, physically picking up the ballot in person at the county election office if you don't want to rely on the mail, or returning the ballot either through the mail or in person going down to the county, or if you're in a county with drop boxes, in a drop box. With the designated agent, it's a one-to-one. One agent can assist one voter. Now, for anybody else who needs assistance, say a person who needs assistance filling out their ballot, there's no one-to-one restriction there. So you could have one person helping 3 different people fill out their ballots, but you can only have one agent for one voter for the designated agent, the person that helps apply for the ballot or return the ballot. It is confusing, does not make a lot of sense, but those are the rules as we have them currently.
Thank you for that clarification. And it is a lot. I mean, it's a lot for I know in the past, and I'm just speaking completely out of turn, but I've known a lot of facility social workers in my day who have assisted multiple residents, obviously, in the act of voting. So, getting registered, all of those kinds of things in facilities to help residents either get transportation to polling places or to physically assist them. So you're right. The mail-in piece of it is the part that requires that 1-to-1 ratio. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies for folks. And honestly, I think for the election officials as well. So that's really helpful though, that you made that distinction for us. I think that will help a lot of our ombudsmen better understand how they can educate residents about what they need. So that's huge. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would say
Um,
if you start to hear things from other entities that seem to contradict some of what I am telling you, that is something that I would encourage you to contact us about again, because there are some other actors in this voting field that perhaps are not sharing accurate information and can kind of muddy the waters around these issues. And we would be interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, that's helpful too. There's another question in the chat. And I think it's good that we go through this. If a long-term care consumer or facility is not considered residence by the election officials, if a resident gives up their former place of residence, so they sell their home in the community and they become a permanent long-term care resident, that facility really is their only home. Can they use the facility address to re-register to vote?
Yes,
I think you did
absolutely.
cover that. So they definitely can use that as their residence in terms of which voting district they'll be in. So, I happen to live in a pretty small area, but, our districts are all designated by number. So like I'm in the 3-1. So that's, and so if your nursing facility falls into that or your personal care home is in that area, then yes, they would be registered within that district. So I think.
Yeah. And even if you have someone transferring from their home in the community into a facility that is still in the same voting district that they are in, if the facility is ultimately where they are going to remain, they need to update their registration and be registered at the facility address.
Yep. Good, to make sure we don't have any more hands up.
I'm not seeing any, Kim.
I am not either, and I don't see any additional things in the chat other than there's thanks coming up across the board for really helpful information. So thank you for that. And I just want to, on behalf of our ombudsman, thank you, Alexandra, for taking the time out. I know we're also going to cross post this information to our virtual family council group so that those families have access to this as well. And I think that'll be really helpful for them as they navigate their way, figuring out how they can get their loved ones to vote. I know I learned some new things today, and so I'm sure all of us did. And we truly appreciate you helping us out. So if no one else has anything else, we'll give them about 30 seconds for the good of the order to at last shoot up their hands. And if I don't see any, then we will call it closed. But thank you again so much for helping out our network to better understand this mystery puzzle out there about voting for residents. We really appreciate it.
Sure. And I'll just put my email in the chat if anyone runs into any problems or hears of anything in their area or has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me.
Yep. That's great. Thank you. And that chat transcript will go along over with the recording and your slide on the helpful websites also. So that'll all be available to everyone, and we'll get it up and posted just as soon as we possibly can.
Great. Well, thank you all for
All
giving me
right.
the time to speak about this.
Absolutely. All right, everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all again soon. Take care.